Eliminating the Hamas terror regime, removing it from power, a legitimate military objective, yes or no?
Of course it's a legitimate military objective for Israel, and that's what I quoted the ICC chief prosecutor saying, but you're doing a very bad job of it.
What's up, everybody? I've got something powerful to show you today. This is a formal debate between Alon Levy, former Israeli government spokesperson, and Mehdi Hassan, the Al Jazeera journalist, squaring off on one of the most divisive questions right now. Were the military actions in Gaza justified after the attacks last year? Alon is defending Israel's response while Mehdi is arguing it crossed the line into something criminal. The clash gets real when Alon asks a question so direct, so fundamental, that Mehdi's refusal to answer it basically reveals everything. Make sure you stick around because the way this plays out is honestly jaw-dropping. And real quick, I always appreciate knowing where my audience is from, so drop a comment telling me what city or country you're watching from right now. Let's get into it.
What's the greater good that's being served at this moment?
Mr. Donovan, this war is not justified because Hamas should not have started this war in the first place.
Well, the question is whether
the question
you are arguing,
response.
you are answering the question. Yes, Israel's actions are justified.
The response is an attempt to prevent the next October 7th massacre.
Well,
on October 7th, Hamas showed us what it was capable of doing, and they immediately went on TV and said October 7th, October 10th, October 1 millionth. Everything we do is justified. We're a nation of martyrs, they said. We're proud to sacrifice millions of martyrs if that's what it takes, and we are trying to stop October 7th and to do so in a way that minimizes the cost to their civilians.
Let me just deal with the last point and the previous point, which is the idea. Let's just be real here. And a lot of military experts say this, but you don't even need military experts. You just need common sense. The idea that you prevent another October the 7th or that you destroy Hamas by making tens of thousands of Palestinian children orphans is insane. It doesn't protect Israel. Forget Gaza. It doesn't protect Israel. And let me just deal with this classic. My paymasters in Qatar. Yes, I host a show for Al Jazeera English. Let's just be very clear. In December, the New York Times published a very, very long piece.
Come on. Nobody
very important
cares.
here. Very important here. It's relevant to the debate. The New York Times.
All right, make it relevant.
Piece.
Please make it relevant.
New York Times published a very long piece which said a month before October the 7th, the head of the Mossad, David Barnier, went to Doha, Qatar, and the Qataris said, "Do you want us to keep sending money to Gaza?" And he went back to Netanyahu. He said, "What should I say?" And Netanyahu said, "Yes, please." And he went back. He said, "Yes, please send the money to Gaza." Alon went to work for the government of Benjamin Netanyahu a month afterwards. He's never apologized for that to the Israeli people. Benjamin Netanyahu's never apologized to that to the Israeli people. So if anyone should answer questions about Qatari funding of Hamas, allegedly, reportedly, whatever you want to call it, it's the Israeli government that facilitated it for many, many years. Alon was in that government. He's the spokesperson for that government.
It was a terrible mistake to allow Qatari money into Gaza on the mistaken belief that if we improve civilian life in Gaza, create jobs, create opportunity, Hamas's psychopath leaders won't launch this war. They went straight on TV and said, we tricked the Israelis. We made them think that we were concerned about the civilians in Gaza, all the while we were taking that money to build the tunnels and the weapons and the rockets we are firing at Israel. If we had known, Mr. Hassan, what Hamas was going to do on October 7th, perhaps we should have started a preemptive war to eliminate that threat before they could have burned the cement of children alive on October 7th. But we didn't. Hamas tricked us, and we won't repeat the same mistake again.
Time out. Going to take a little bit of a 10-second breath and slightly lower the temperature, but only slightly. Alon, you were making the argument that Israel's actions are justified in the pursuit of the destruction of Hamas. We've come to the point, though, where even Israeli military officials are saying it can't be destroyed. Therefore, what happens to that argument that the justification is the destruction of Hamas if it's an organization, a movement that can't be destroyed?
Of course Hamas can be removed from power, just like ISIS was removed from power. ISIS is now a terrorist organization. that is trying to blow up concerts in Austria, it no longer controls territory the size of Austria. Following this war, we cannot allow the Hamas terrorist regime, it's not an organization, it's a terror regime and a terror army, to regroup, restock, rearm, and keep shooting rockets at our towns while it is still holding civilians. It is a regime that must be removed from power because we know exactly what it wants to do if given half a chance, and that is to do October 7th again and again.
This is the moment where Alon Levy establishes something that should be completely obvious, but somehow gets lost in all the noise about this conflict. The moderator asks what greater good justifies the military response, and Alon answers with absolute clarity. He says this: the response is an attempt to prevent the next October 7th massacre. On October 7th, the group showed us what it was capable of doing, and they immediately went on TV and said, October 7th, October, 10th October, 1 millionth. Everything we do is justified. We're a nation of martyrs. We're proud to sacrifice millions of martyrs, if that's what it takes. Think about what that means. This isn't about one attack that happened and then stopped. This is about an organization that openly promised to keep doing it forever, until Israel is completely destroyed. So when people ask if the response is proportionate, you have to understand what the actual threat is. It's not just responding to what already happened. It's preventing an infinite number of future massacres by an enemy that explicitly said they will never stop. Then, Mehdi Hassan tries this gotcha moment about the Israeli government allowing Qatari money into the territory before the attack. And here's where Alon does something really smart. He doesn't deny it or get defensive. He owns it completely and then weaponizes it. He says this: it was a terrible mistake to allow Qatari money into Gaza on the mistaken belief that if we improve civilian life, create jobs, create opportunity, the leaders won't launch this war. Then he explains what actually happened. Alon says they went straight on TV and said we tricked the Israelis. We made them think that we were concerned about the civilians. All the while we were taking that money to build the tunnels and the weapons and the rockets. You see what just happened there? Alon turned Mehdi's attack into proof of exactly why this organization cannot be trusted and why they need to be removed from power. They exploited Israeli good faith to prepare for war. That's not evidence of Israeli complicity. That's evidence that this group will use any opportunity to prepare attacks. And then comes the ISIS comparison that basically ends the debate about whether this is even possible. Alon says, of course the group can be removed from power just like ISIS was removed from power. ISIS is now a terrorist organization that is trying to blow up concerts in Austria. It no longer controls territory the size of Austria. This is brilliant because it provides the exact historical precedent that proves the model works. ISIS was dismantled as a governing force. They still exist as terrorists, but they can't wage conventional war or control populations anymore. That's the goal here. Dismantle the governing and military capability. It's been done before successfully.
And Israel's war, Mr. Hassan, I'll yield the stage to you and ask you, eliminating the Hamas terror regime, removing it from power, a legitimate military objective, yes or no?
Of course it's a legitimate military objective for Israel, and that's what I quoted the ICC chief prosecutor saying, but you're doing a very bad job of it. What's interesting?
Do I understand that after October 7th? Do I understand? No, because I want to clarify and understand we're on the same page.
You want to clarify, the guy who can't answer why you killed 15 civilians.
No, I want to understand that we are on the same page. Do you agree that
I'll answer your question
October
when you
7th,
answer mine.
It was legitimate for Israel to remove the Hamas terror regime in order to prevent another October 7th. It's a yes or no question, Mr. Hassan.
No, it's not. It's a loaded question. I'm going to say it was legitimate for Israel to defend its citizens inside of Israel. It's not legitimate to occupy Palestinian territory for decades on end. And let me answer. Can I actually answer what you came to me for?
If I can rebut,
let me answer John's question. Let me answer
Alon, you've had about 2 or 3 minutes in a row. Go ahead, please.
You asked a very interesting question of Alon. You pointed out that he keeps saying, notice the sleight of hand. You said that he said, and he said it many times, not just here, Hamas should be destroyed. When you asked him, Israeli military experts in general say it can't be destroyed. Notice what Alon said? He said, remove from power. Quickly move the goalpost there. Because he knows that Hamas can't be destroyed by these means. In fact, the former head of Israel's military,
said from
let me
the
finish
very
my point.
beginning.
The former head of Israel's military, who was a member of Netanyahu's war cabinet, he said earlier this year, quote, anyone who says you can destroy Hamas is telling tall tales. So it's not me calling Alon Levy a liar. It's the former head of the Israeli military.
Mr. Hassan, from the beginning, Israel has said that its goals are to remove Hamas from power and dismantle its ability to wage war again and to live up its threat of repeat October 7th. And that is why I ask you, after October 7th, was it legitimate for Israel to remove Hamas from power in order to eliminate the threat of repeat October 7th? Yes or no?
Very simple answer. Israel has the right to defend its citizens in its territory. It doesn't have a right to be an occupier. It doesn't have a right to... Let me finish the point, because you think they're your neighbors. The International Court of Justice says Gaza and the West Bank are occupied. They've been occupied every day since 1967. You did not withdraw in 2005. You blockaded,
I'd like to explain. I'd like to explain what the purpose here is of the legal fiction.
And I've already answered the question, Alon. I've made the point that even if I was an Israeli general trying to destroy Hamas, killing thousands of innocent people only helps Hamas. Every terrorism expert in the world says you're a recruiting sergeant for extremist groups when you go and kill innocent civilians.
Mr. Hassan, whether
Why can
this
you not
war,
understand that?
whether
Why can
this
you not
war,
understand that?
Time out, Alon, time out. I have a question for whoever wants to jump on it. Is Israel's war in Gaza making Israel more secure?
And now, we get to the single most important exchange in this entire debate. The moderator yields to Alon, and he asks Mehdi Hassan the most fundamental question possible. Alon says this: it was legitimate for Israel to remove the terror regime in order to prevent another October 7th. It's a yes or no question, Mr. Hassan. This is such a simple, straightforward question. Either it's legitimate to remove the organization that just committed the deadliest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust and promised to do it again, or it's not legitimate. There's no middle ground here, and watch what happens. Mehdi Hassan completely refuses to answer. He says, no, it's not. It's a loaded question. I'm going to say it was legitimate for Israel to defend its citizens inside of Israel. Then immediately pivots to, it's not legitimate to occupy Palestinian territory for decades on end. Do you see what just happened? He was asked a direct yes or no question, and he gave zero answer to the actual question. He can't say yes because that would validate the entire military campaign that he spent this whole debate condemning. But he also can't say no because that would mean he thinks Israel should just leave the organization in power to repeat the attack. So instead, he does this word salad about occupation and defending citizens inside Israel. As if you can defend against rocket attacks and tunnel networks and hostage-taking by only operating inside your own borders when the threat is right across the fence. This evasion tells you everything you need to know. The critics of Israel's response have literally no coherent answer to the question of what Israel is supposed to do about an organization that just slaughtered over 1,000 people and promised to keep doing it forever. And then Mehdi tries to recover by saying that even if you're an Israeli general trying to destroy the group, doing it this way only helps them recruit. He says, even if I was an Israeli general trying to destroy the organization killing thousands of innocent people, only helps them. Every terrorism expert in the world says you're a recruiting sergeant for extremist groups when you go and kill innocent civilians. Here's the problem with that argument. It assumes that recruitment is the primary constraint on this organization's ability to wage war. But that's not true. Their primary constraints are weapons, tunnels, command structure, and governing capability. You can have all the recruits you want, but if you don't have rockets to fire or tunnels to hide in, or commanders to organize attacks, you can't wage war effectively. The Israeli strategy isn't about winning hearts and minds. It's about destroying military capability. Those are two completely different objectives.
When this war began, Hamas had a fearsome missile arsenal that rained thousands of missiles on our cities. I had to keep running into a rocket shelter. Israel has now eliminated the threat of rocket fire from Gaza. It has cut off its smuggling routes. It has destroyed its missile silos, and it has destroyed Hamas's weapons capabilities. That alone has made us safer and makes it easier to sleep in our beds at night.
Three quick things. Number one, the Israelis went to Supreme Court recently, and they were having an argument in Israel's Supreme Court, and they put in the official filing that we do not control Gaza. Even after all this time, Hamas is still in control of lots of parts of Gaza. So they say the honest stuff when you're not looking.
It's true.
Number two, I interviewed Alon recently, former head of Shin Bet, former Israeli admiral. He said very explicitly, Israel will not be safe until we give Palestinians freedom. This is his words, not my words. And number three, I'm glad you had a bomb shelter to protect you, because the Al-Dos family in Gaza did not have a bomb shelter to protect them.
Okay. Another question. We have not yet talked about the hostages, and we should. Is Israel's action in Gaza going to is it for the benefit of the hostages?
Absolutely. Israel is fighting to bring the hostages home while Hamas is starving and torturing and raping them. We managed in November, because Hamas was being clobbered and it wanted a breather. They released nearly half of the hostages. We've sent in special forces to rescue hostages in raids my opponent has condemned. Israel is fighting to put the military pressure on Hamas to release the hostages, but Hamas doesn't want to release the hostages. And the reason it doesn't want to release the hostages is that it knows that the longer this war goes on and the more suffering it generates among its own people in Gaza, the more it advances its own goal of isolating Israel. And Mr. Hassan, it pains me that you do not seem to realize the role that you play within Hamas's strategy when you deflect blame onto Israel. Never demand any accountability from the Hamas regime. When you know that Hamas's goal is to maximize suffering, you give it a reason to drag on this war. If you want it to let the hostages go, you should tell
of all the nonsense
to
you've said
pressure
tonight,
Hamas to free the hostages.
Of all the demonstrably untrue things you've said tonight, this is the big one. So apparently, if you want a deal to end the war, you're enabling Hamas's strategy.
No.
That's what you just said.
No,
I'm enabling Hamas's strategy.
But you have systematically undermined every leverage Israel has to free the hostages.
You know who's undermining?
Mehdi, stop pretending
Can I
you
answer
care
the
about
question?
the hostages.
Of the two of us, hold on. Of the two of us, whose strategy has released more hostages, mine or yours?
Now, the moderator asks the most practical question of all. Is the war making Israel more secure? And Alon provides measurable, concrete results that cannot be disputed. He says this: Israel has now eliminated the threat of rocket fire from Gaza. It has cut off its smuggling routes, it has destroyed its missile silos, and it has destroyed the weapons capabilities that alone has made us safer and makes it easier to sleep in our beds at night. This is objective reality. Before the war, Israeli civilians were running to bomb shelters constantly as thousands of rockets rained down on their cities. Now, that threat is gone. The rocket arsenal is destroyed. The smuggling tunnels are cut off. The weapons production is dismantled. You can argue about methods all you want, but you cannot argue with results. Israeli families are objectively safer today than they were before the campaign began. But then, Alon delivers what might be the most devastating argument of this entire segment. He completely reframes what Mehdi Hassan is doing in this debate. Alon says this: Mr. Hassan, it pains me that you do not seem to realize the role that you play within the strategy when you deflect blame onto Israel, never demand any accountability from the regime. Then he explains why this matters. He says, when you know that the goal is to maximize suffering, you give it a reason to drag on this war. Let me explain why this is so important. The organization's entire strategy depends on international pressure forcing Israel to stop before the job is finished. They need people like Mehdi generating outrage about Israeli methods while never demanding that they surrender or release hostages. Because as long as that pressure exists, they can just wait it out, regroup, and prepare the next attack. Alon isn't just debating policy here. He's exposing the functional role that critics play in enabling the very strategy they claim to oppose, and then comes the absolute knockout question that Medi Hassan has no answer for. Alon asks this: of the two of us whose strategy has released more hostages, mine or yours? And then he provides the answer. Over 100 hostages were released in November during a temporary ceasefire that only happened because the organization was being militarily pummeled and needed a breather. That's a fact. Military pressure forced them to release hostages. Mehdi's strategy of demanding permanent ceasefires with no preconditions? That released 0 hostages. Actually worse than 0, because it would have given the organization time to regroup and fortify while keeping all the hostages. This question exposes the fundamental problem with the ceasefire-first approach. It sounds morally righteous, but it actually accomplishes nothing except giving the attackers exactly what they want. Here's what people need to understand about this conflict. There's a massive difference between tactics you wish weren't necessary and tactics that are unjustified. Nobody wants urban warfare. Nobody wants civilian casualties. But when you're facing an organization that embedded its entire military infrastructure under hospitals and schools, that uses its own population as human shields, that promises infinite attacks until you're destroyed, you don't have the luxury of clean options. You have the choice between doing nothing and letting them attack again, or doing something difficult and costly to prevent future massacres. Alon made the moral case clearly. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about collective punishment. This is about preventing the next attack and the one after that and the one after that, because the other side already told you they'll never stop. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.